Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. Well, I think we have a very interesting show for you here at the end of the sailing season. The race season still has a few weeks left, but we wanted to kind of check in and maybe do some stories that cover the fall and maybe get away from some of the regular themes that we cover. We are all interested in photography as it relates to our boats, getting good pictures. We have drones now, but we check in with one of the best photographers in the Midwest, one of the best sailing photographers, Martin Chimecki, a Polish native, who's going to talk to us about how he kind of stumbled into being a photographer and how it's become a full-time hobby and a full-time job for him. He's got an eye that is hard to believe, and you'll get a chance to see some of his pictures. But the conversation that we had with Martin is amazing because he loves sailing so much, and I think that'll come out in your interview. And he's a guy who maybe doesn't have a lot of formal background, but is an unbelievable photographer. So stay tuned for the discussion with Martin. I think you'll appreciate it. What can you do on your boat when the basic part of the racing sailing season is over? Well, Wally Cross joins us to talk about how to maybe learn the mental aspects of how you can practice in the fall to get ready for next year. And I think it's a very insightful discussion because it's those kinds of little tidbits that you can work on your boat while you're racing in some of the fleet championships and maybe some of the local end of the year races. I think it'll be a really insightful discussion. The last part of the show, we're going to get a chance to spend some time talking about a rather unfortunate incident that happened during the Chicago Chicago Yacht Club's annual race. One of the 70 Santa Cruz Ohana was given a 3-year hiatus from the race for some arguments and some discussions. We're going to get into that with Dwayne Burgoyne, our favorite PRO from down at North Cape Yacht Club, one of the experts out there in Western Lake Erie. Dwayne and I are going to discuss the issues. We're not going to give you a whole lot of opinions other than maybe I'm not sure that a murder sentence for jaywalking, I guess that is an opinion, but we're going to have that discussion without getting into a whole lot of the specifics. The decision is being made as we speak this afternoon, but I think it's something that should have the light of day because I think it's important as we race. These are not beer can races. These are legitimate syndicates that spend lots of money. And I think sometimes tempers could come down, but we'll have that discussion at the end of the show. And coming up next, we're going to show you a little bit about, we've gotten into getting into the media room of both the ocean race as well as Sail GP. And they've been kind enough to give us some very good video. So we're going to start covering those races a little bit quicker. Obviously, we can't go around the world, but the insight to the races I think is really cool. And we're going to stay up with the ocean race specifically because that'll happen between now and all the way to September of 26. So as we finish the season this year and kind of get into next spring, we'll pick it back up. But the video is, I think, very insightful. And honestly, it's just well done. So I thought we'd bring that to you and give you an opportunity to see that. So up next is a little bit about the ocean race. And then we'll jump into a conversation with Martin Chimecki.
To all those who say, you can't stay up all night. You can't survive on that. You can't fly across an ocean. You'll get too cold. It'll be too hot. It's too scary. It's too fast. You can't sleep with all that noise.
Stop it!
You can't come back from that. You can't compete in a mixed-gender team. You can't connect a continent with a sailing race. You can't change attitudes towards the ocean. You can't change the world with a sporting event. We say, yes, we can. Watch us.
Welcome back. We're talking with one of the great photographers in the world of sailing,
Martin, and I'm going to have you say it because I'm going to mess it up.
Chumiecki.
So I'll make sure we get that spelled right. We're having a conversation out here in front of Bayview where you're a member, and you've been a stellar photographer. You're all over sailworld.com and a number of other places. And I want to kind of go through a little bit from the beginning. You're from Poland. You came over in 2000. You have a Polish wife. You're also an American citizen, and you're also in sailing. So let's start with the easiest part. Talk a little bit about how sailing in Poland and how it kind of operates for the youth. You were telling me earlier about that.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for having me on your show, because I did go through your library and it's impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for all you do for sailing, because for a long, long time we will need someone who will take all our common interests and just put out and let people know who we are, what we do, and why we do. So,
Thank you.
And that's very important. And also, I want to say hello to everybody who is listening, everybody who support Greg. I want to congratulate you for your cooperation with World Sailing. And also, I want to make sure that everybody at the Bayview knows that I'm so proud to be a member of a Bayview Yacht Club, because you guys give me the American family in here in United States, and especially in Detroit. You know, when I came from Poland in 2000, you know, everybody's looking for some association. And even though I wasn't a through and through sailor, like let's say Team Profit, but
Or me.
oh yeah,
You and I are in the same boat. We really are.
but the sailing community and sailing was always in my heart. I grew up on the lake. I grew up with a boat. We always do boating. I will never ever leave anyone outside of the access, quick access to the water, and especially here in Michigan. That's a tremendous pleasure. And also thank you for hosting me here at the Bayview Yacht Club, which I become a member in 2000, I would say 11. And it's a dear to my heart, and I take a Bayview logo everywhere I go. In fact, all in my closet is Bayview clothes. So no matter what day, no matter what I do, I always have some Bayview part on myself. But coming back to my story, as I tell you before, beginning in 1995, when we won the green card lottery and we came to United States just to see how things going here on the other side of the globe, and we like it. So there was a tough time in Poland. We just go through the transformation. I see all that American dreams here. So in a short story, it was my lottery ticket.
Okay.
I would say.
All right.
So in 2000, I came here following my brother, who decided to try American education here, and during that period I met my wife. She's from Warsaw, love Warsaw, and we decided to stay here. And then you know, in 2005. 2004, I met Kerry Barno, Mark Stavke, and Commodore Greg Thomas, and I want to give them great and big thanks for giving me a chance, because those three guys brought me here to Bayview Yacht Club, introduced me to the Bayview family, and since 2005 I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here every year. There was also my twin Makino race this year, so 5 more to old goats.
Okay, so the question becomes, you mentioned a little bit about sort of selective sailing in Poland is for kids at an early age. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm from Bielsko-Biała, which is a small town in the mountains in Poland. However, we have a small lake nearby, and you know, all the schools in our region decide to make a sailing in a way mandatory for the students. And the reason why for that, because sailing is that sport who make you aware about the teams, about the problems, solving the problems, develop your leadership skills, and all around, you know, teach you how to quick react in sometimes dicey situation. So since that, you know, I kind of get hooked to it. Of course, with sailing comes with party and all the afterward stuff. So that was kind of along my lines. So that's how I become a sailor. So then in United States, when I came here and I see the lakes and all the beautiful fresh waters what we have and the source, the great source what we have, I said, you know what, that's the dream place for me to be.
So obviously you became a sailor, have had a boat. Now your imprint, and that's really what we want to kind of talk about, your imprint to the world here is the photography. So take me back how it started, and then I want to get into some specifics as to where it fits, and I think there's some good questions coming.
Well, how it started is kind of funny because, you know, when I came here, I didn't speak English at all. You know, Michael Jackson, I love you, and that kind of type stuff. So I know that I have to communicate with people. Communication is a key. So back in Poland, I worked for Philip Morris. So I worked on the campaign for L&M when we introduced the L&M brand to the market. So I had a chance to work with photographers, with agencies, and I see their work. And all those pictures I saw was nice, perfectly shaped, but it didn't have this personal touch to it. Even though our cigarettes, but still we remember big cowboy smoking, and you see you follow that theme.
Okay.
So I grabbed my camera and I start shooting myself, not knowing anything about photography.
So you're self-taught.
Yes,
Wow.
and that could be the key.
Okay.
Because I'm looking for those objects completely in different way.
Okay.
So when I came to United States, my first job was at Pan Lake Country Club, and I was just the locker room guy, with no language, no way to communicate. Coming from the big American corporation, I just grabbed the camera and I just followed those guys around the golf course, and that becomes my language.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking this question, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a chance to talk to a couple of the best sailing journalists, one local, one not so local. We talked to Phoebe Waller-Hall. We had a chance to interview the last show, Mr. Gladwell,
Yep.
who's part of the sailworld.com world that we're both now a part of. I was a newspaper guy that used to manage photographers, guys who had 4-year degrees, guys who understood the context of pictures, not just somebody who goes out and takes a picture. And to call yourself a photographer is twofold. One, either somebody's paying you to take pictures or somebody's buying your pictures, right? So not everybody can take a good picture. And in the context of the media, I know what it's like to look at good photography. That said, we want to talk to you about the process. So your process comes without the formal education, but there's an eye to it. And so when you're taking them, when did it become obvious to you that there was something different about the way you took pictures?
I mean, eye is a one thing to it, but also I think the emotion and the stories behind it too. So in my photography, I'm more oriented to the story, because I call myself, after so many years, we have 20 years, we have about 250,000 images from the Mackinac race alone.
Wow.
So for me, that's a story.
Okay.
So I'm chasing not necessarily specific boat, specific action, but I'm chasing the story. Now I know all of you guys here well enough, so I can follow your story. So after all those times, I become the photographer, but also / storyteller, archivist of the Great Lake racing, specifically Mackinac race.
Okay, what makes a good sailing picture?
You know,
Minus the story, what makes a good picture?
A funny thing is, because, you know, a lot of people, when I'm on a Mackinac just wandering around the street, you know, talking to people, a bunch of people come to ask me and ask me that question: why you take many of those pictures when something is wrong? Like we have the sails in the water, with lines in the water. We have the.
Doesn't matter. It's a story.
Not only that. Not only that's the story, but usually when we come to the bars in our yacht club, we have a tendency to tell that story. But those pictures with those mistakes, that's the pictures when we laugh about it, when we get pissed about it, when we just have some sort of connection because we remember our mistakes.
Okay, that's the story.
That's yes.
So let me ask the question again. The technical part of taking a sailing picture. Here's the reason I'm asking that question. I'm a guy on a boat. We all take pictures of each other. If you're lucky enough to have a drone, you may have a picture overhead. Most of us don't have that case. There's a guy that flies a plane a couple times a year and he takes pictures, and he does a pretty good business with it because everybody wants to see themselves. Fair.
Yep.
So now you're setting up. I'm sitting at home watching this interview, and I've got my Pentax 1000 or my K30 Nikon or whatever I'm shooting with, my phone. What advice would you give them in taking a good picture on the water as it relates to sailing?
As far as sailing, as a capturing the boats, I don't think it's any bad pictures of it. Boats are so majestic.
Okay.
Uh,
Point and shoot.
Yes. However, the interest of those pictures is not only the boat, but the people on the decks. Because when you see in their faces the love of that, the passion of that sport, you see them working tightly on the lines. That's the pictures. That's what makes that. Not necessarily look at my lens, look at me, but doing what they love to do. That's what I try to capture.
As you watch through this interview, you'll be looking at all kind of Martin's pictures. We're going to show those as part of an overlay to this. In order to get the faces of those pictures, you got to have a lens that appropriates that opportunity, right?
Yes.
So you're not shooting that with your phone, usually speaking, unless it's maybe on a starting line where there's a bunch of. If you're in the middle of the lake, it's hard to get those kinds of images. So what equipment do you use, and what would you recommend for somebody to consider to use that doesn't have that professionalism?
Well, I'm using a Nikon.
Okay.
I'm using Nikon, and I'm happy with Nikon. However, I'm moving a little bit more toward Sony. However, one thing is a photographer equipment, but another component, which is, I would say, maybe even 60-70% of successful pictures, is your boat and your driver to put you in the right place.
Okay.
Just because sailing usually happens right on the water, so you are farther from the shore. And if you get a driver who can put you right there, who knows sailing, who knows the energy going with it, that's when the great pictures is. So this moment, I want to thank all my drivers for doing that, because they're a part of the success.
Okay. Last year I was in the Queen's Cup. I was on the back of Usual Suspects of Big 52.
Yep.
Coming across Lake Michigan at a high rate of speed.
Yeah.
I had all kinds of ideas as a photographer, in this case a videographer for the show. I'm at the back of the boat, because that's the only place you can kind of stay out of the way. It's the widest part of the boat, and it was really windy. It was a terrible storm. And I had all kinds of ideas about getting all these great pictures, but I was just hoping to hang on to the damn boat.
Yep.
Because I was going to go off the end of it if I didn't. My point is that there's not always going to be conditions. So here's the follow-up question. A lot of pictures you take. We have Photoshop. We have all of these programs and software that makes pictures better. Ansel Adams, the greatest black and white photographer in the history of the world, did not believe in any filtering. And the picture was what he shot. So my question to you is, how much do you alter your pictures? And here's the follow-up question is, if you're making the pictures better, I'm not talking about cropping, I'm talking about changing tones and the rest of it, is it hard to look at that as art because you're manipulating it with science? It's not really the art that you and I grew up with. Is that a fair question?
Absolutely. So to answer you this question, I do two things.
Okay.
After each race, and each race I will say we have about 5,000 images. So I will upload them right after the race, raw, straight from camera to the server, to the website, so people can grab them for free of charge, as they come. Although they are those original. So if you are on a boat, you know that in the water, sometimes horizon is not straight, sometimes this, sometimes, but those pictures are absolutely raw, straight from the camera. And those pictures are strict, free to download, high resolution for any sailor, anybody who would like to promote the sport of sailing and state of Michigan. However, I do select about 2,000 pictures from each race, and I edit them. Editing them meaning straightening the horizon and click one tap, auto contrast.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay.
I don't do
So
manipulation
okay.
with the pictures, because I think that our environment and all what we do, it's so good, so nice. It doesn't need any edits.
Are you a motor drive? You're using motor drive most of the time?
No.
Okay.
No, I took single shot. All my pictures are on the manual setup, and I don't do the rapid shots because I try to think about the frame. I'm chasing the frame. I don't chase the boats. I don't chase specific people. I chase the frame.
Okay.
So if I get the frame, I will shoot 2-3 shots and stop it.
Okay.
So if I have it, I have it. If I miss it, I miss it. But the rapid shot is too much work, too much, it's
Well, we used to load up with 300 frames in the old
Yeah,
days,
yeah.
and we'd shoot 24 frames a second, and it was a different animal, and I get
Yeah.
that. If you can't get a good picture out of 24 frames a second, you shouldn't have a camera in your
Yeah.
hands. You talk a lot about the artistry of what your process is without the formal background. Was there art in your life other than photography?
Always, outside of photography, I'm a full-time photographer now, but outside of photography, I used to work for the Polish Mission Organization, works with a lot of art, promoting art, in fact, to unite Polish art and heritage to United States. I promote Auschwitz. I represent Auschwitz with an art program called Forbidden Art. Back in my hometown, I always grew up with the musicians. We always go for the concert. So art was always present in my life. However, creating art is two different stories.
I understand.
I am lucky enough that I choose the camera to be my communication, to be my language. And I'm lucky enough to make it work, so make me career. But yes, I never thought, I was a businessman. I finished a business school, I worked for Philip Morris, I was a salesman. It was far from any art. It was just money, sell, that's it. But then, when I get back to the art, slows me down. The quality of life is much better. Maybe not less money, but the quality of life is 100% better. So that's why I cherish art, because art makes my life much easier.
I asked this question of sailors we've had obviously some stars on the show. I was asking them at the end of the interview what they like about sailing, because I think it's a question they never get asked, because they're always being asked about their profession. And in a couple cases, Ken Reed would be one, who's a great sailor, kind of explained that he didn't enjoy sailing much anymore because it had become a business.
Yep.
You and I met the morning of this year's Mackinac race on Saturday up there, and you were walking around with a camera and me with my little Nikon, and off we go, and we had this opportunity to now have hopefully a relationship out of what happens. My question to you is, what do you enjoy about sailing photography that just for you? What is it that makes you love it so much, become a full-time job?
Love of photography, love of sailing. I think the camaraderie and the common thread who connect all of us. I enjoy when people get pissed in a protest room, but then 15 minutes later they grab a beer in the bar and they are best friends again. I enjoy that we are behind each other 100%. I enjoy the kids. I spend a lot of time, I try to do as much as I can with our junior sailors here, which is future of the sailing, and to see the passion, to see the smiles, to see the willing to spend, willing to share their time with their friends on the water. But the sailing is one thing. You have to prepare boat, you have to clean boat, you have to do. They're all involved with that.
Okay.
So I think that's the most important. But not only that, now, when I have 20 years of Mackinac race on, what I enjoy the most, going back to my files and seeing those faces who may not be with us anymore. But I capture them, I freeze them in that moment which they cherish and love the most.
You remind me of a story. We ran a front page picture of a celebration in the city that I was editing the paper. And we didn't get the picture the day of the celebration. So the publisher said, just run last year's. And we did, on his order. And I thought it was a bad idea. Come to find out, 2 women had called and said, by the way, the 2 guys in your picture that died, they're not in the picture. And you kind of said it was this year. And we had to write a retraction because you can't do the process. One of the things I want people to understand, I had an opportunity to run photography departments as part of being an editor for a newspaper. There's guys who take pictures, there's guys who think they take pictures, and then there's artist photographies. And I think your artistry and photography that goes together comes with something you have that I don't have. And sometimes it's also luck. I won a couple of MPA awards where I happened to walk around the back of a building that was burning at the time. And I walked up a bit of a hill, and out of the smoke comes a sheriff with a child on one arm and a gun in the other. And as this smoke is wisping, I took a picture. Well, It had nothing to do with my photography skills. I just happened to be in the right
Yeah.
place at the right time. That's also part of
Absolutely.
great photography. Making a choice if you're going to do it, and especially from that standpoint. But I want folks to understand that you've stayed in this business and become successful at this business because God gave you something of an artistry thing that you don't have as a formal education. And I think you can come to that expert level what one of those two roads. Is that fair?
It is fair, and I think, my great success in all that stuff, I just love people. Everybody is different. Everybody present different, attitude, different way of moving around. And take me a moment, but, I always try to follow that, thinking that, and just manage to get into it, just to capture the real moment for the people. And you're right, the luck, sometimes luck is all you need. If you are in the right moment, in the right spot, you can have a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
Using your phone. You don't even need equipment.
No, and that's how it's changed.
Yes.
We all had to have K1000, Pentax K1000s. That was the original camera that everybody bought because you could buy it for $100.
Yep.
If you got a Nikon, oh my God, I'm going back 40, 50 years. If you got a Nikon, you made the business, right?
Yeah.
If you got an F1 with a motor drive, you were, oh my God, you kept that on your side, and it was a whole different deal. It's been really fun looking at your photography. It's been fun exploring a little bit of time with you, and I really appreciate the time you spent. This is about as good a day as you can imagine at 70 degrees on a Thursday morning, and we'll make sure that we get a chance to highlight a lot of your photography as part of this show.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You even turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
Welcome back. We're getting finally a chance to talk to Wally Cross again, our great technical advisor, as well as probably one of the best sailors in, if not the United States, certainly in the North American continent. We always get a chance to talk to Wally. We appreciate you being on board. We're at the end of the season. We're at Crescent now. This is mid-September. What can we do? And that's kind of the conversation we want to have in twofold over the next couple of weeks. We've had the bulk of our race season, yet there's still races. But this is always a good time to sort of prep. And I always think about it, if I were a football team with a 2-8 record and I'm playing my last game, what can I learn, right? So the premise I'm having is, what can we do to get better at the sport at this time of year, and what should we be paying attention to? And maybe some of that is related to mistakes that we made during the year, or maybe there's some new things we can practice on. And I wonder, how important is this season, or should the season's over, we just go out and race and have fun?
Oh, you bet, Greg. Thanks for having me again. But this time of year is my favorite time of the year because it feels like the pressure is off. We work so hard come spring to prepare for these events. I just finished an article called Deserve to Win, and all the items that you need to think about and prepare to ultimately feel like you deserve to win a sailboat race. But now, like you said, all the major races are pretty much over. We've got some fall races that are fun. But this is really a great time to do your homework because, let's face it, the weather has changed. In the past, these races would be getting cold and you couldn't wait to put your boat away, and then you start thinking about next year. But right now, being late September, I'll bet we have another good month and a half of sailing. And so all the things that you might have learned or felt that was good, felt that needed improvement, this is the time of the year to do it, because then you can actually see if you're making those improvements before you have to wait throughout the winter. Springtime is sort of a rush time. So yes, I love it. And for me, as a sailmaker, this is the time of year I can get out with a lot of boats. And when I'm on a boat, that's where I can really understand how the boat sails.
Okay, there's been a lot of conversation about lack of crews. You can't find bodies. I'm not sure that's at the top level of the amateur sailing we do, but that's true in a lot of just regular kinds of races. Is this a good time to maybe bring on a guy who is wanting to be on a crew, give him an opportunity to maybe work with a crew?
Yeah, and crew, as we all know, is a critical part to the ingredient of success. You have to have a team and build a team in any sport. And for me, I'll take a group of great attitudes over a team of just talent without the attitude. So yeah, finding those people are critical. And this is also a great time to reach out to the youth or women, young men, young women, so forth, that really have an interest in the sport, but you've got the time to train them without that pressure of getting ready for a race. It's a little bit tougher with some of the younger people just because of school. But again, yeah, and most of our races this time of year are later in the day, early evening type of races. So if you know of anybody that you can reach out and help, sure, this is perfect. But the sport's not easy finding people that want to sail.
No, that's for sure. Even the crew boards that you look at, there'll be the same guy listed 7 times and nobody calls him, and that's an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
How much experimenting can I do as a sail, crew and with my boat? Can I experiment at this point of the season where maybe we're trying some things that I didn't try during the season? Or is that pretty much done in the spring?
No, this is an ideal time. For instance, the boat right behind us is John Hutt's boat, CNC 101. And we went out, it was Monday with his crew, just getting a feel for the boat, because it's been a while since I've been on that boat. And we discovered some pretty amazing things, that there was some asymmetry going on with the boat. The boat sailed differently on one tack than another. I mean, pretty dramatic.
Why?
But there's something pretty dramatic that was never discovered before.
Okay.
So my point is when the boat comes out of the water, I know what has to happen to get that boat to feel the same on tack to tack. If it was just a normal race summer, he would have never really understood that, because he just thought maybe the boat just sails better on one tack than the other. But there's something major wrong tack to tack, and that can be fixed physically.
Okay, so this is kind of put this in the middle of this conversation, because you hit me with a thought. We've got a number of guys who've bought race kind of related boats, right? The next 11 that was bought locally. There's a few other boats. And one of the complaints they all have is that maybe it's too much boat for them. And I don't think that their lack of sailing, it's just it's a different boat than if you've been sailing a cruising racing boat and all of a sudden you're on a full-fledged sled. Does it make sense to hire a Wally Cross for the day to come out and kind of walk through that? This would be a great time to be able to do that. If you're complaining about not being able to sail your boat, then obviously you don't have the tools or maybe the skills. To me, it would be an opportunity. One of the things I've learned on this show by talking with people like you is how much I didn't know about sailing. And I have no problem raising my hand and going, oh, really, how does that work, right? So as you've had these conversations, not many, it would make sense to me to hire somebody to go out to sail, to find out, like you're saying, that it tacks differently in 2 different places. That's really good information.
Well, you see it in any sport, even the sport you talked about, lacrosse and so forth. I mean, coaching is a critical element of any sport. And I'm not just saying guys like myself, there's plenty of people like me, but getting advice from the outside in, not necessarily from the core group that you're sailing with, but maybe a different voice from the outside in, and just kind of opening up the possibilities. What could be different, or explore what could be better to make your boat perform at a higher level. This is the perfect time of the year to do it. And on top of it, we've had just tremendous weather.
Oh my God, yes. Well, we have no wind. You had a little more wind than that. But it's a great time to do it simply because it doesn't matter at this point.
It doesn't matter.
You put the boat away and you're also setting the boat up, right? Kind of thing. And I think that's something that we should take a hard look at. So let me tag on one thing. You mentioned, you deserve to win. Is a better statement, you have to learn how to win rather than deserving to win. And I say that because we learn all the time from athletic teams. I have to teach my team how to get over the hump when it's in the third quarter and sometimes they slump. How do we get over that? Is it grit? Is it process? Whatever it might be. Deserving to win is important, and that was what your paper was about. But before you deserve to win, don't you have to learn how to win?
You do. You got to feel comfortable winning. There's a lot of people I talk to that say, crap, we got here in second place and first place around the mark, and I'm all nervous. I don't know what to do. And they're more comfortable when they're a little bit further back in the pack. So first and foremost, when you deserve to win, you're comfortable to win. You're comfortable to be in that spot. And then it goes along with all these different check boxes, to get to that point.
I don't want to sound arrogant, but as a coach, I've always, young guys will come to us all the time. Coach, how did you get that? How did you get that fast, that far? How did that all work out? Well, it's not my first time down the road. And it's not that I'm better at it. I just have more tools in my box to be able to get there, right?
Sure.
So I'm farther ahead because you're learning the process, and I learned it 10 years ago when I've had to do it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
That's a huge process, and that was my point of learning to win. When a team learns that, when you put that in their brains from a coaching perspective, they start to process that. They're ahead of the competition because they have a road that they can look at and where they're headed. That's a huge process.
No, their desire to win because they feel more comfortable now in that position. And anything less than that is an uncomfortable feeling. Right. So to get that comfortable feeling, we need to be in a position of knowing not only we want to win, we can win, we deserve to win, and we should win. You know, not everybody's going to win, right? No. We know that for sure. But getting that ultimate confident level to that point, knowing that you can deserve to win, is a really cool feeling because instead of being nervous at a start, you're excited to be at a start. Instead of being concerned about a situation in the race course, you're proactive. You're looking forward to that situation. Yeah. And it's really a pretty cool feeling. And you see it in all sports. They talk about basketball players where the rim is twice the size, right? Or a baseball player where the ball slows down, they can see it better. It's that ultimate confidence that you can't turn on with a button. You can't wake up one day and say, oh yeah, I'm confident, I'm going to go out there and win. You got to earn it, and you earn it through hard work at all these different levels, all these different ingredients I talk about.
Very few sports that simulate life. I think golf is really close to that. And I say that because if I go out and ski, I have a certain level. I know where I can attain my level. If I go out and sail, I know exactly where I can sail. I can be a good golfer on a good day, have better than my talent, and the next day be worse than my talent. I can shoot a 72 one day and turn around and shoot a 68 the next and then shoot a 78. Now, I'm the same guy with talent, but it's one of those sports that you borrow it for a while. That's not necessarily true in sailing, but I think that ability to understand what you can do rather than just throw it off the end of the dock makes a huge difference in that process.
It really does. It really does. No, and that's a great analogy because there's very few golfers that golf once a week that claim to be extremely good, right? It takes effort, it takes energy, and it takes a commitment. And then they feel like they deserve to be there.
Good. Well, listen, as always, Wally gives us the best tips, and I think these are great conversations. And I've had more than a number of people tell me that they listen to this segment of the show because the insight is something they never thought about. And I think that's really an important point to talk about. And we're going to have this conversation this week. Next week, we're going to have a chance to talk to Wally a little bit about sort of the mechanical part of learning to win. And that's something we want to be able to hit with next week. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a second.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We're going to have an interesting conversation. We're going to another Voices. We haven't had more than a couple of those, and we're back with our favorite PRO, North Cape sailing savant, expert, Western Lake Erie kind of guy. Dwayne Burgoyne's been with us for a long time, and we're going to have a discussion about something that I think is a bit disturbing based on sort of the conversation we want to have. Dwayne, I went back a couple of days ago to look at the results of the Chicago to Mac race. We're doing some research on some stuff, and we were going to have a story on Ohana, the winner of Class 1, and then we come to find out that they were in fact penalized for a variety of things, and we're going to kind of get into it, and it's been an interesting conversation. I think it's fairly known within the sort of the upper levels of racing, but I'm not sure everybody knows what's going on with Ohana. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's pretty fair. It's we've been hearing a few things. It's very confusing. It's very confusing at this time.
Okay. So let me try to encapsulate this, and if I'm missing something, just jump in because we're going to try and be as accurate as we can. Ohana competes in a variety of races. It's a 70 Santa Cruz owned by Toho, and Tor has talked to us about the rest of it, and I'm not going to get into the personalities and all the rest of it, but they had won the race. They'd come from behind, and they had won the 2025 Class 1 division of the race. At the end of the race, from the committee, the actual people that are sort of the referees, is that the proper terms I'm using?
Well, the organizing authority would be Chicago Yacht Club.
Okay. When they came across the line, apparently the numbers from their sale, which are supposed to be displayed on the lifelines, were apparently not as clear to the organizing committees they should have been. Is that kind of pretty accurate?
Yeah, it's pretty good. There's a banner that goes up there. They're 10-inch letters. They're white. They're fluorescent, and they're supposed to be on a black background. And I was fortunate that we were there out on the island already, and I watched them come across. I saw the numbers. I mean, but the reality of it is you're watching Yellow Brick. You know who's coming in. You're standing out there with 20, 30 people on the beach waiting for them to come in, and we saw the numbers. But what happened was that later on somebody said something about the background was not a pure black background. It looked like maybe sailcloth of carbon fiber threads in it. So we saw pictures of it.
Okay.
What it all looked like.
So somebody in the organizing committee makes the decision that they're going to protest. Is that the proper approach? Okay. So after 60 hours or thereabouts of sailing, and after the party, and I understand they were told before the party on Tuesday that was going to be a penalty for what they didn't use or did use. But it was interesting is that same piece of cloth with sail numbers on it had been used for 4 years without any complaint prior to that point.
I had heard the rumors that they've been using, and they do the Mackinacs. They do both the Mackinacs, and they do a lot of races in the local areas too.
Okay.
And so you got to put that cloth up for a lot of different races.
So when they were finally told before the party, my understanding is that it didn't sit well, and they were trying to figure out what penalty was going to occur. They were given a 5-minute penalty, which took them from first place to third place. Am I right so far?
No, a 5-minute penalty would have been fine. They were well ahead of everybody. And maybe I will tell you that I was on the beach watching them come in. There wasn't anybody under the bridge. Of course, we have rating systems and everything. And I believe when we started investigating into this, it started looking like they were like 22 minutes in the lead. So a 5-minute penalty was nothing to them.
Okay, but my point was that whatever the corrected times and whatever the penalties were, it dropped them from first to third. Okay?
It did.
Okay. At this point, when people are tired, they've been sailing, they went back to the committee to have a conversation, and that conversation didn't go very well. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's a pretty good way of putting it. You did out of South Shore. You did the Queens Cup last year. I mean, you sailed across in 8.5 hours of rain and sailed more. How tired were you when we got done there? Take that and amplify it by 3 or 4 times. Plus, they just had a come behind victory, and I helped them come into the docks. I mean, and stood there and watched them go through the process of making sure that they had all this proper safety equipment on it. They were excited. I mean, this is what we sail for. This is the peak of all the sailing in the Great Lakes. They won.
So I guess before we get into how it got escalated, we should mention is we're not giving answers, and we're not casting blame. We're just kind of looking and having this conversation because I know tomorrow the Chicago Yacht Club is going to have a conversation about the penalty where the eventual penalty was they're out of the race for 3 years. And we'll get to that in a couple seconds. And this isn't a he said, she said. This is more of along the lines of discussion is it's almost a death sentence for jaywalking. That's kind of the term that I've been using. And I just want to kind of go through it. So by Ohana's administration's own words to us, to me, they were certainly vivacious in their discussion and probably a little overboard when they had conversations. But again, 60 hours of sailing, a little bit of partying, and all the rest of those things. It seems to me, and again, I'm speculating, but it seemed to me Chicago Yacht Club could have handled the approach better. Whether or not the emails that went back and forth of the conversations and all the rest of it. So at some point, the organizing body's ruling of going from first to third and giving them the penalty
escalated into the Chicago Yacht Clubs, penalizing them for 3 years and went to a 69, which is not typical in sail racing. Is that fair?
Well, Rule 69s are out there, and Rule 69 typically, if you're at a regatta, at a local or regional regatta, even national regatta, if there's a conflict of Rule 69, you have to bring 3 national judges from U.S. sailing to come together, and they have to agree that this was outrageous enough to give a penalty of some type. So,
okay. So here's my question: is a 69 to give you and again, I'm trying to give it to sort of maybe I even understand it. Would a game ejection for a Major League Baseball player or Major League manager or a football player, would an ejection from a game be sort of equivalent to a 69? I hate to use that number, but
it becomes a little bit larger penalty.
Okay. So it's the most egregious call you can have.
Absolutely.
And
it is. Yeah. You don't want to hear the word 69.
So from the discussion about the sailcloth and using the colors, we jump into this long discussion, which turns out to be certainly a long-term. The penalty becomes a 3-year ban from the race. For a race fleet that is more than just a bunch of guys having fun. This is a professional fleet where money's spent, much like the 52s, maybe not as sophisticated, but certainly this is not just you and I getting on the back of our boats and going. It isn't. These guys take this seriously. So it becomes a kind of a giant process. Is that fair?
Absolutely. This is not beer can racing. This is guys being flown in from here or there. I don't know if they have professionals on the boat or if it's just a bunch of guys that work together very well. I know some of the guys, and they sail pretty hard. They practice a lot. This is not just a beer can race.
That being the case, you get this penalty. We did some research on the penalties from 69s, especially through the Chicago Yacht Club. Come to find out, this is a pretty severe penalty. Okay,
it is.
And then to take it one step further, and I want to be really clear about this, to take it one step further, they didn't file the petition, they didn't file the complaint, the protest with U.S. Sailing. They went all the way to World Sailing because there's no way to protest it, or in this case, there's no way to, I want to get the right word.
Appeal. They can't
appeal. Yeah, there's no way to appeal it, okay?
Yep.
So Chicago's looking at the premise. Now, there's been about 17 different things talked about. There's been talked about that part of the issue was boys being boys. We wanted to make sure one guy was going to win and one guy got a chance and an opportunity, and it was that story. Then we heard a story about not being invited to parties as a fleet. Then we heard stories about the A3 that Ohana had built to start the season, had some issues, and even Tor said that wasn't a problem. So lots of innuendo swirling around what essentially becomes a penalty for something that's been used for a long time. And it'd be hard to look at all of this and not think there's some personal animus behind all of this. Is that fair?
That's pretty fair. And you know what we haven't mentioned, we keep talking about the Rule 69 about the banner. They were exonerated for the banner. The organizing authority came back and looked at the banner and said, that's legal, that's fine, everything's fine. But what the problem was is that it was the wording or the arguments or whatever it is. And we could get into it. And you are an official. I am also a certified official. And I'm telling you, maybe it's a great time, but when we go to baseball games or basketball games, if an umpire makes a bad call, referee makes a bad call, we let him know. We let him know that he's blind and his mother's fat or whatever it is. So sometimes, as a race official, I get some people that come up to me and they're not happy with a decision I made. That's just normal life of being an official. I think you agree with all the officiating you've done.
My question to you is, in all the time you've been a race official, that's decades.
It's been a while now.
Yeah, but my point, have you ever been in a situation where somebody said something so egregious that you gave a 69 and gave them a 3-year ban from a race? Is anything?
No, No,
Okay.
not at all. I've had a junior sailor just absolutely with words that in this day and age we couldn't do, and calling everybody, and we just had to sit down and have a conversation with him, settle him down a little bit. So yes, you settle him down.
Okay. Your job is to be neutral and do the rest of it and all those.
Absolutely.
With all of these, we went through this with the 52 fleet 2 years ago with Victor Wild and with Bob Hughes, and it was a different interpretation. You hope if you look at that situation, you kind of look at it and kind of come back and go, the answer for that problem of the NORs not being as written as precisely as they should have been, instead of just giving a clear cut winner, they sort of said maybe, and two guys win. Well, that's it's the old story. Everybody's got to go home with a trophy kind of process, and it's big boys and their toys, and I get that part of it. But what's kind of egregious to me with this is not being able to scale it in a place. And again, I've been a referee for a long time in the collegiate levels. I've had all kinds of. I walked out of stadiums with flak jackets on. I'm not exaggerating. And you got in your car and you took the police escort to the freeway and off you went. This just seems weird to me. It just seems off to me. And more importantly, again, I think it hurts sailing. I think it hurts U.S. sailing at a time when publicity is a part of those discussions. I think that's something that. And I know tomorrow we talked to Laura Renz yesterday, and they have a conversation. Excuse me, Laura Muma. She's having a conversation with Chicago tomorrow. But when you go out of the way to pass over from U.S. sailing to get to world sailing, you're doing things in a process that doesn't give anybody a chance to have another voice.
No, you're putting a black flag out there. I mean, you don't have any options here. When it goes international, there are no appeals, and so the process did not happen. And I don't understand why the process didn't happen. There has to be some reason for that. And does it help? Does it hurt USA? You're damn right it does. I mean, we got Charlie Enright just came in as a president, and as an RSA, I've been listening to what he's saying and everything. We've got some issues here, and we're going to try to take care of this. But certainly, this is not going to help us.
I keep thinking of the world we live in, and it's certainly divided. And I understand that there's two sides of the aisle that everybody talks about and the rest of it. But this almost seems like the sort of real world politics, and it seems like we're going to get you one way or the other, even if it goes by means that don't make a lot of sense. And if this was it's funny because some of the guys that were on Valor, the old Stripes that Bill Martin owned,
yep,
Powerback and those guys, Evolution. We talked to a number of people. A lot of the story isn't accurate because there's just all kinds of people with ideas and thoughts, and some of them aren't accurate. They're just not. So you kind of push through that stuff. But everybody I've talked to, including PROs that were on Valor, that won, said this is it's a death sentence for jaywalking. And we finally got some conversation back with Sarah Muma from Chicago. Everybody else has been. We tried to talk to Win Soldani, no response. Win was the chairman of the race. We tried to set some stuff up with the race director at Chicago Yacht Club. Don't even get a return phone call. That's fine. That's if you don't want to have a conversation with us. But I just think this needs some air, and I hope that somewhere along the line, the guys in Chicago, when they have their meeting tomorrow, can come to some sort of conclusion that makes sense, that everybody's going to, I don't know if it's apologies or whatever it needs to be, but it's just a bunch of guys that nobody handled this well on either side of the aisle. But to kill somebody dead that when they're racing in this kind of series, it's unfortunate.
Absolutely. I mean, to come behind victory, this is the pinnacle of all sailing in Western in the Great Lakes. And then all of a sudden being told that you're exonerated from the problem. It really didn't exist. You're exonerated. Everybody's happy with it. You're exonerated from the problem. But now we didn't like whatever the language was, whatever the notes were, a thing like that. Now we're going to penalize you 3 years for something that it's a pretty heavy penalty. And there's more questions to be asked.
U.S. Sailing told me today that there's only been 4 penalties of over 2 years in the last decade across the country, right?
Well, think about
I don't know
that.
that
But think of
detail.
no. I'm just
And
saying.
he said
And I don't.
today,
I didn't ask. I was just quantify. I was trying to quantify the ruling for this thing. And I know that everybody's got an opinion. Certainly, I don't think we're taking one here. I think what we're saying is let's drop the temperatures down a little bit. Pardon the expression. Get your heads out of your ass and look at this from a standpoint of maybe some apologies. I did get a chance to look at some of the text. I listened to some of the people that made the language. Okay, there was heated argument, but from everything we know, away from the conspiracy crap, it's just amazing to me that. But again, I don't own one of those boats. I'm just another guy. But I just thought this needed some light. That maybe if somebody says something publicly, maybe they take a look at this and come with a better decision. And I wanted somebody with your expertise on this. And what got me sold on having this conversation was not giving those guys an opportunity to protest when they move it across from U.S. sailing to world sailing. That told me that's a pretty definitive mark of what you're trying to do to somebody.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a big penalty for something that really didn't happen. They were exonerated from the protest. It really didn't happen. Usually everything is forgiven right then. And athletes are hot. 60 hours of sailing, go to a party, have a few cocktails, loose lips.
so it goes back to this point, and it's something that we talked about earlier today. If you think of all the sports, the participatory sports, there's been lawsuits in sports all over the place. But there's very, very few situations in any sport except sailing where the courts and or the arbitration boards have to argue about outcome, right? They don't argue about the outcome of the Super Bowl or the World Series. The guy with the most runs wins.
Yes.
For whatever reason, all the way back to the 80s, think of all the litigious crap that went on America's Cup. Based on the results, not based on the rules and the rest of it. So maybe it goes back to big boys and their toys, and they gotta have the last word. So who knows?
So let's go back to the banner. They were exonerated from that, and then they get a Rule 69, and then they penalize them 2 places. So they were 1 second behind Evo or Evolution. So I mean, it was double penalty here.
One of the things that we've heard all season with this fleet is that they came up with Quantum built them an A3, and it's a little different than everything else. And there was all kinds of discussion, like somehow it was an illegal sale, yet it was measured, it was weighed, it was all the things that you needed to do and got approval. So that's just the banter of guys that maybe somebody's smarter than you. So you're looking for every edge you can find. Well, you can piss and moan about it, but if somebody's better than you, that's just the nature of the beast. You got to get better. But this is different than that. This is sort of, taking your ball and running home,
So we get back to the A3. If you look at a Santa Cruz 70, and you can go all the way back to Bill Lee's Merlin, the forestay is not all the way out to the bow. In fact, I think Santa Cruz 70 is almost like 4 foot. The bow is 4 foot out. So somebody developed an A sail. And if you look at all the new boats, even look at the Great Lakes 52s, they have extensions past the bows. So they developed an A sail, from what I understand, and I haven't seen it. They developed an A sail that went to the bow, which was 4 foot past the typical place that you would put an A sail on the pole. So if that was a rule violation, they should have had it. But it was certified, and they all said it was okay to use. Now, did they use that for their victory? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of going to the first Sail GP meeting. I've used this measure a couple of times. There's things that happen in sailing that don't make sense to me as a journalist. You go to a press conference for Sail GP in Chicago the first year, and it turns out you can't ask a question. So maybe I've got to understand the sport better, but in this particular case, I think it smells from the neck down, and hopefully good things will happen and they make some good solid decisions tomorrow. We'll if I find out before we go to publishing this tomorrow, if not, we'll follow up. But I appreciate your help. I appreciate your time on this discussion, and hopefully we've given a little insight to give a forum for maybe guys can be a little calmer in their decisions.
Thanks a lot, and always love talking about sailing.
I just wanted to thank Martin Chimecki for all of his talent, and I think he's somebody that's fun to listen to. More importantly, you got to check out his website, because I think that's really important. Second part is Wally's information, as it always is. It's just very insightful, and we hope we gave you some insight to the process of what goes on with Ohana. And we're hoping in the future maybe cooler heads can prevail with sail racing, because again, it hurts the sport and certainly hurts the region. So let's see if we can have that conversation. And for all the guys in back, we'll see you next week.